Hello, everyone. We are congregated here to have a discussion on animation and VFX in the era of OTT platforms. The discussion would be led by Mr. Chaitanya Chinchlikar, who is the Vice President and Business Head at Whistling Woods International. He brings forth an approximately 2 decade worth of industry experience. Joining us today is also Ms. Vani Balgam, a critically acclaimed creator director bringing forth a 2 decade worth of experience in animation and industry. She's the founder of Dancing Atoms and is also a story consultant and mentor with Unreal Fellowship Program for Epic Games. We have with us Mr. Bimal Poddar, who is an independent filmmaker and animator. He is the founder of Fairy Cows Animation Studio. Radha, his first attempt independent film, for which he has received reception in the national and international market. He recently won the most prestigious film award, the National Film Award, for the best animation film in non-feature category. The next panelist we have today is Ms. Charuvi Agarwal, an animation film director, producer, and an immersive artist. She is the co-creator of The Legend of Hanuman, currently airing on Disney Hotstar. Studio Charuvi Design Labs has created an extraordinary IP and content across a variety of programs of media and various mediums, some of them including TV series, films, and VFX. We also have with us Ms. Becca Topol, who is a writer of both film and television. She has created Mira, the Royal Detective for Disney, and also serves as a co-producer and the head writer of the show. She is also developing projects for DreamWorks Animation and Spin Master. Some of the shows she has includes The Ramen Girl, Babies, Wicked Moms Club, and many more. So, Chaitanya, go ahead with your discussion.
Hi, hello everybody.
Hi,
Hi,
Chaitanya.
Good morning, evening, wherever y'all are. We are recording this from various parts of the world with, Vani is in New York, Becca's in LA. I think Charuvi, you're in Delhi?
I'm in Gurgaon, that's correct. NCR.
Gurgaon, okay.
Part of,
So,
yeah.
so I mean, Smoke Central.
Completely.
I'm here in Mumbai, and Bimal, you're in Mumbai too?
Yeah, same place.
Cool. Okay, so like Nachiket mentioned when he introduced us, there is a significant amount of work that all of y'all have done in the industry, right? Y'all have actually created content. And what we want to do is we want to take this opportunity to talk about animation and VFX in today's times. So while the topic does say in the era of OTT platforms, I don't think we're going to restrict ourselves to that. We're going to talk about where animation and VFX stands today, where Indian animation and VFX stands today, and what we need to do to make sure that, it continues its lovely journey that it used to do. So if we look at the Indian animation and VFX industry over the last decade and a bit, right, we have moved from being the world's factory to actually taking on roles which are in ideation as well as in pre-production. So today India is able to offer the full service animation and VFX pipeline to all content creators, both domestic and international. Clearly, this has not happened by fluke. Industries don't get born like this. There is a strong investment that has gone into it, both by individual filmmakers as well as various studios that have taken the chances that they needed to take in order to get this done. So I think that's really where we should start. So, from the time of doing all the lovely work that Vani did which took her onto the Oscar podium to what she's doing now with Unreal Women's Creator ecosystem and being a mentor to others. So Vani, how do you look at how your part and how Indian animation and VFX has changed in the last decade and a bit?
Thank you for having me on this panel. It's fantastic to be with all of you. I first of all want to say that setting up a studio, an Academy Award studio in India, and trying to get some of the best talent to produce some of the highest quality work was one of the keys. Even back then, we tried very hard to doing Indian content, but there was no market. Nobody wanted to watch Indian cartoons. They would just call it, "We don't want to watch Indian cartoons," And we wanted to make great films back then, but the market was not ready at that point 10, 15 years ago. So today, as a founder, creative director at Dancing Atoms, one of the big things that I've done after leaving DreamWorks a couple of years ago was to just start going back into the ideation process. I believe that India has tons and tons of stories to tell, and the market is ready. People want to watch that Indian quirky connections that we have with our homeland. And I think the journey has been fantastic in focusing so much on the story fully right now, and saying, okay, we are storytellers. And and I think that journey has started already. I've invested the last 6 years in saying, this is it. I'm producing, I'm directing Indian content, and that's the journey ahead for all of us, I would believe.
Yeah, lovely. And we see this happening. So about 10 years ago, if you looked at Indian animation on Indian television, 70-80% of it was dubbed in Indian languages, but the visuals were imported either from Canada, from Europe, Japan, the Shinchan, Doraemon to everything from, Dora, etc., etc. But today, if you look at the ecosystem, almost 80-90% of uh, animation on Indian screens is locally created. And when I say locally created, I don't mean locally processed. I mean actually locally created from scratch, right? And I mean, to kind of almost top it off, are two major achievements, I would say. One is the fact that the world's number one pre-school kid series on Netflix today is an Indian origin content. The other one is a fantastic piece of work that is out on Disney Plus Hotstar. And that gives me the perfect segue to go down to Charuvi, right? Because what Saraswati and what Vani talks about, what they did and what she's doing is exactly what you have done. You have taken an Indian mythological superhero and you have made him cool.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chetan. Thank you so much. But yes, I mean, that was our idea, that, how do we re-narrate the story in the most stimulating manner, so that, it could just reach out to all the audience. And of course, it had to be a family oriented program, but the idea was to just challenge ourselves, and so that we could push the quality out there. And that was the motto. And interestingly, because when I started my animation company going back in 2008, that was always the idea, that, we wanted to create IP. And considering the market wasn't ready, we started very small. And the first film that I created was Shri Hanuman Chalisa. And that was the time when we truly experimented that, how can we challenge ourselves to create a quality that is acceptable globally. And we kept pushing ourselves. We, of course, took about 3 years, but that gave us the confidence that post taking out the content, when it was really accepted globally, we were very assured that if we sort of convert this into a TV series, it will really, it may be successful. And thankfully it did. So that was always the aim. And then in 2017, we just took the plunge and went into creating the TV show.
But so, on that, I'm just going to probe you a little bit. Was this something that you created on your own and then went and syndicated it to D plus H, or did they come in early and commission it?
So basically, the short film became a pilot in a way, and that
Okay.
became, so we collaborated with Graphic India, and Graphic India and CDL. And that's how we went ahead and showcased the pilot, which was the film, that, okay, this is what we wish to give you. And they were I'm really glad that they were very supportive of the decision. And that's how we went forward.
Yeah, because it just talks about two of the world's largest OTT platforms, the Netflix and Disney Plus, are keen to greenlit original Indian animated content, right? It's honestly no
True.
joke. Um, so from kind of going down the commercial route, which both Charuvi and Saraswati have done successfully, let's also look at what Becca is doing, right? Where she's taking the commercial industries of three countries and trying to put them together in a three-way co-production. So, it's not easy. I mean, just two countries and two groups of people, getting them to like each other in the first place is not easy. And then getting them to create content together is, even harder. And she's doing it with three. So, Becca, how do you see the talent from all these countries working together? I mean, uh, are you seeing all of them on par? Did you feel at any point you had to push and pull one from the other? What's that experience been like?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for including me on this panel. And I love hearing all the incredible work you're doing. In terms of Mira Royal Detective, which is the project that I developed for quite a number of years and went through many different iterations of it to get it to the point where, it was ready to go and greenlit. Disney India was always involved very closely, and our partnership with Technicolor in India was utterly critical. Very early on, I went and visited with them, and we sat and we talked about it. There was a lot of exchange of ideas to really bring the authenticity to the piece, because so much of Mirror Royal Detective is about not only reaching the South Asian market, the Indian market, but also creating universal stories that really allow people to open up to life and culture and music in India. And the kind of thing that I find really exciting, I love collaborating on the international level. I think it's super exciting. We got a lot of support from talent because they said, look, we want to see this kind of program on Disney. We want our kids to see it. And just an unbelievable amount of support, which is why, we were able to work with Frida Pinto and just some amazing talent, who's well known in India as well. But I think the starting point, and for me personally, had to come from a place of authenticity. And to have that authenticity, it required just working with people, consultants. Our choreographer is Indian. And then when we worked with Technicolor, they were so involved in helping, and they would give notes and help steer us. And we talk about different holidays we want to feature. They had some key ideas that were wonderful that we got to execute. So it was very exciting, I would say, and such an opportunity. We're in a global world now. I think it's just wonderful that we have this opportunity.
Lovely, nice. So, after Hanuman and Meera, let's talk about Radha now, to kind of complete the sequence of Indian named content. So, from your graduation at NID to winning the national award, so taking a design sensibility to animation storytelling, What's that journey been like, and how do you think the Indian content creator ecosystem today is geared up for that?
Yeah, Chaitanya, thank you. And thank you, Film Bazaar, for having me on this great platform with great leaders from the industry. And mm, yeah, so Radha was a journey. I mean, it was a story which actually I started, drafting from my school days, like NID days. Uh, but in between, after you get out from institute, you have to survive, and you have to sustain yourself in the ecosystem. So it was a good experience, and luckily I have worked with so many good directors during my last couple of years. So Radha, actually, we wanted to see animation is a storytelling medium, right? Whatever you do technically, end of the it, like in- you have to put your heart into it, right? Your calculation, your numbers doesn't work if you put your heart into it. So we wanted to explore the storytelling medium and where we stand right now, right? I mean, industry is happening. It's on its own way, right? There is a calculative production process they follow, and they produce content for masses. So it's all designed and properly designed, so that, so where we are standing with a small film, if we can create something which is satisfy ourselves, as well as if we can target our audience with a short content. So that was the exploration we was doing during Radha, and it was a great experience. We didn't expect it will go till national level. So it was a like
Yeah, most
uh,
most people who win national awards don't really set out to create content that wins national awards, right? So it's, you just kind of really put your head into it, and then it happens. So now that we've kind of spoken about the content that all of y'all are creating and that all of y'all have worked on, let's take half a step back and look at the ecosystem that y'all are a part of. So Vani's part of a genuinely global ecosystem, having worked in India, China, US, Canada. Becca's done a three country co-production. Looking at the global presence of talent and looking at the talent that's there in India, how would you say we stack up, and where do you think Indian animated content, both on the visual side as well as on the narrative side, um, where's the gap? Do you see a gap? And otherwise, how do you find the talent that you're working with? Why don't Bunny? Why don't you go first?
Thank you. I was saying that the global presence is not there yet, to the extent that it should be there. To be very honest, a couple of shows have made it. They have checked the diversity boxes of saying, okay, we picked a show, we're doing this, we're doing that. Internally within India, there's a lot of good stuff that is being produced for children. So that's fantastic. But sitting in New York, living in Los Angeles, that information that is there in India has not passed out to the West at all. And I think there's a huge gap, and I think that gap can be reduced with a lot of intervention from the government, promoting, doing film festivals. Right now it's the Oscar season. We've got the Oscar season, and everywhere we've got short films being screened from different countries. I'm still continuing to be a part of looking at all the films that come from all around the world here in Los Angeles and New York. But not a single film from India has come, even a short film. And that's kind of sad, like we are strong, we have great stories, and there isn't, that gap is not there. And I go to watch the screenings every year, and every year my heart sinks and says, why isn't there one animated short film from India that even gets into that list? So I feel like a lot of mentoring needs to happen, a lot of studios need to get involved, and that's exactly what I'm kind of trying to do. I'm trying to produce and build a community and bridge the gap between what's happening with the Indian talent and bring it to the West. Because if you take a look at it, from India, Indian people, there are no producers that promote Indian content in the West. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. There are studios that are promoting, the studios that are going after outsourcing work, and that's what pays the bills. I respect that. I think that's a very important part of the equation. But promoting Indian talent outside of India and having producers just doesn't exist. There are no Indian producers in the West that are sitting there and saying, here are a bunch of great Indian shows that need to come to the West. Or here are some great short films or feature films that need to be put in the festival circuit in the
Mm.
US. One or two have done it, but that's not, I wouldn't say
Yeah,
that
I
it's
mean,
not
Guneet, maybe, you can literally count on two hands
exactly.
the
So,
number of people who've done it. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. So
I
I feel like,
no, carry on.
no, I'm saying, to answer your second question about Indian animated content and visual and stories, I think visually with Instagram and with this art station and everything, the explosion has happened. Visual art is traveling. It's on fire. There's so many shows that are on, or there are so many great Indian character designers that are currently working on a lot of Netflix shows here in the US. But
Yeah,
Indian talent, like either the students have come to the US, worked very hard, and they're getting picked up, but the talent that is phenomenal that's sitting in India is not even being looked at, because they're like, how do we bridge this gap? And I think the internet has changed the world quite a bit. People now are scouting everywhere, all around the world. And I've always believed that talent is universal. And it's an explosion of the visual medium traveling across the globe. So there are some great filmmakers that I'm working with in India right now to try and push that thing. But I think there need to be many more, even smaller studios. Like for example, if you take a look at Pixar and shorts, right? Something that they
mm,
started 20 years ago. Today, you've got that pipeline that happens where every year there are at least 4 or 5 films that are supported by a studio, given 6 months to 2 years to make your short film. And so I sat on a panel recently, and there were like 5 films from Pixar shorts, which is their internal program, and they are over there. And so I feel like the gap is really up to us. Like we can't expect someone else to help us. I think
yeah,
that needs to really go away. I feel like the Indian studio should pick one shot and just work on that shot and help that shot to get to the next level. And that's the only way that will happen. And the government intervention promoting will be a big deal in terms of the film festivals, that it travels outside of the country.
yeah. I completely agree, and especially on the on the fact that there is no talent issue, but there is a producing, or there is a kind of putting it all together issue, right? So, uh, I mean, generally we've graduated about 200 odd animation graduates now, who've all done 3 year or 4 year programs in the last 10 years. And, we did a count about 3 or 4 months ago. Out of those 200, 160 are no longer in India, right? And I actually reached out to a few of them saying, boss, what are you doing? One is in Imageworks, one is in Veta, one is somewhere, one is in Double Negative in Singapore or wherever. And they're like, at some stage we just hit the glass ceiling with what we could do in India, right? And they're like, there was nothing. We were doing the same stuff again and again and again, and it wasn't what Whistling Woods had trained us for, because people weren't doing the IP, they weren't doing the character design. All that would come from LA or would come from Canada, and you would just be executing it here, right? And now they're actually staying, after seeing things like Mighty Little Bheem, Hanuman, even other stuff on Indian television, Veer the Robot Boy, or some of this other stuff, right? They're like, okay, this makes sense. This is interesting. We may now want to think about coming back, right? So, in this light, Charuvi, how I would say that you've kind of arrived at the right time, at the cusp, where there was enough talent already available, and you managed to get the organizing around it going in order to completely produce an Indian show out of India and put it out to a global audience. So, could you talk about any challenges or any issues you faced with the talent pipeline?
So, Chaitanya, coming to your earlier question and even the question that you're asking right now, um, we had a lot of challenges with the talent pool for sure. But just to answer your previous question, I just wanted to add a few things. So, when I created my first film back in 2008, again, the challenge was talent. There were no risk takers, investment in capital, education, and producer. That's always the challenge in India. Because what happens is typically anytime you want to create your content, you require capital, you require investment. So, as a studio owner, as a filmmaker, whatever I created at that point of time was my own investment, my own capital, which eventually, I mean, it was treated as a pilot. So, it was the timing which was perfect, which was 2017-18, and just before COVID, that we created the whole TV series and we hit the market at the right spot at the right time. But looking at how the whole market has been at this point of time, yeah, and even before, I mean, these particular problems have been there throughout. I mean, even right now, you have filmmakers like Bimal who is over here. There are a lot of filmmakers over here, but investment has been a major problem from day one. There aren't any grants, there are any funds available for them. So whether it's a short film or a TV show, what one has to do really do is, look for a producer who can give you the investment. That's always the case. Even in our TV show, I mean, Graphic India was the investing party. They invested on the TV show. So you require capital at any point of time. But having said that, we are in this forum. So, and we eventually want to talk about this is, having this kind of a support system from the government where filmmakers can have some sort of a financial aid. So that's one. Now, coming to education also, you have Whistling Woods, you have NID, but there are very few to name. Other than that, you
Yeah.
have vocational institutes. So typically what happens in a vocational institute, we all know which vocational institutes I'm talking about. What usually the pipeline is, anybody goes there, pays the money, gets the education in regards to operating the tool. But there is no filtration process that, somebody is being selective about the portfolio and then training them. That process is not there. So having just such small number when it comes to education has a huge, I would say, a huge problem. I mean, you look at US, you look at Canada. I mean, look at the kind of colleges and institutes which are there. They are
Yeah.
right there churning out pool of talent, which is the cream. So India too has talent, but it's the education which is missing. I mean, I get talent, but then I have to train them. Most of the time, I'm training my own talent.
And
So
honestly, that's not
either
your
it's
job.
going to be that's not
Honestly,
my
that's not
job,
your
but
job.
I have to do it. But my background is more of a fine artist. I'm a painter by heart. So for me, it's not my job, but then I have to do it because I don't have any other
Correct. You need
solution.
no. You need to run a business. So I mean, if raw
And you need to
material is
run the
not
business.
available, you have to
But true.
create your own.
Completely true. And with animation is purely art, end of the day. It has composition, it has colors, it has textures, everything. Now, how do you teach a person who's a tool operator, all of these senses which are very crucial.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
completely
where there's
agree.
a huge barrier. So that's one of the, I mean, the other problem which I was talking about. And the other is, of course, marketing, producers. I mean, if they are brilliant filmmakers, then they can't market their films because they don't know the art of doing business. They have no idea how to step out, go to film festivals or pay the fees or go where. I mean, how do you find a distributor? It's something which is not taught to you in schools, that how do you find a distributor, how do you get in touch with
Yeah.
a broadcaster, how do you take that leap?
No,
So yeah,
most
so basically
filmmakers,
that.
most content creators don't even know how many rights there are. They
That's true.
don't even know that that cable and satellite overseas terrestrial is different from DTH and cable and satellite, right? That you can actually salami slice your rights and sell it separately, have separate sales agents that will find you a terrestrial buyer in
Totally.
Ukraine and another terrestrial buyer in Brazil, and you can sell
Yeah,
OTT to someone else except these IPs. So that entire global distribution sales agent ecosystem, which honestly Film Bazaar is trying to create, is something that we need to teach more and more and more and more people, right? So AFM, for
true.
example, one of the reasons why the US gets a lot of the content that it gets is because it hosts AFM, right?
Mm.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
Similarly, on the education side, right? And just entertain me for like 30 seconds here. So what exactly you spoke about is what the problem was when Whistling started, right? That the only thing out there was people who would teach you Maya for 6 months and say, oh, you're an animator. To me, it was like somebody who knows Microsoft Word calling themselves a writer, right?
Exactly.
In my head, that's the ecosystem, that's the equivalent, right? So okay, so I know Excel, so I'm a statistician. No, it's not. That's just a tool. I mean,
It's not
today
like
it's
that.
Maya, today tomorrow
Yeah.
it'll be something else, right? There was
Something
animation
else.
long before
Totally.
Maya came around, and animation will remain long after whichever
The
softwares are
tool is
there right
gone.
now go
Yeah.
away. Exactly, right? So it's the combination of art and craft, technology and narrative. And while
Very
you
true.
say that a lot of people don't focus on art and craft, even fewer people focus on the narrative aspect. And at the end of it,
Yes.
storytelling, right?
It's
So
storytelling. Totally.
whether you take a simple story like Radha, or you take a global, complex, multicultural story like Meera, at the end of it, story hai,
Yeah.
right? Like somebody I was telling that, I mean, uh, Wally could have been drawn in stick figures, and it would still be a successful piece of content because the story is so
Of
compelling,
course. Story
right? It
story
could have
is
been like
the
horrible
core
animation. It
essence.
wasn't. It was great visuals, but even if it wasn't, it would have still done so well, right? So there and this is where I think I'd like to kind of come into Bimal. Are you kind of having the similar situations that Charuvi has gone through? You've
Yes, yes,
been able to
exactly.
locate pockets of talent that can really
Exactly. I
propel
think I am having
Pericles.
exactly similar experience because I am facing, maybe I am working for the film uh, like very recently after Charuvi, I think 2000, say, I think 7, you have made your film. So I work on my film like last, let's say 3 4 years, but still I am having similar problems. So making of the film is not a problem. I mean, you can beg, borrow, still how, like, you can just finish your product, you can ready with your product, but after that, what
Correct.
is the next stage? How
What is the
you
next step? Yeah.
collect, yeah, like how you recover your invested time and financial whatever involvement was already invested. Now we need support for our next content, right? If I have
Hmm.
to do the same struggle again and again, then it will be difficult for us to generate those content, right? Like, that's why I'm saying, I mean, if there is a smooth pipeline, like sort of a which a smooth system, where I can showcase my film, or I can release my film like the feature film releases. Yeah.
Yeah. So would it
So
would it help if somebody like the NFDC came in and set up a global film distribution fund, right? Which chooses, say, 5 films every year and then backs them to the hilt, sends them to every festival, sends the creators out to every festival, sends them to markets, puts people in touch with global sales agents, hires a consultant to put these people in touch with sales agents, and actually turn it from a piece of content to a piece of commercially successful content. Right?
see,
So,
there.
hmm, carry on.
See, yeah. So if you see, there is commercially successful content as well as, if you see these short films or short format films, they are making to the festivals like every year. If he has select like 20, 30 films, and national also, like so many films are kept. But after the film festival happen, these films just
These films are
vanish. Like
finished.
they
So
don't.
if you have a global fund, say, I don't know, $500,000, and it picked 5 films, and said, okay, here's $100,000. Go and present yourself in every festival that's out there. Go and attend every market that's out there, right? So, Becca, how would you think, how would the world react to such kind of support coming in from the Indian government to Indian content? How do you think global sales agents or the commercial buying market would approach something like this?
I feel that there's a thirst for content, and as we're all talking about great storytelling, and we know now, and we can just watch, the different streaming platforms, that content from all different countries just explodes. And people are out there looking for it. And I think the support and the mentorship is a really great thing. I mean, a lot of studios have programs where they bring people in and mentor people. Disney has a program. I mean, all of them do, Fox, Sony. And the idea is to really nurture talent, and then train them, have a training program, and you bring in different mentors and then send them on projects. So I think it can happen different ways. Um,
Mm.
I mean, my understanding is there's less of that with the U.S. government, as we've talked about, but I do think there's such a thirst for content. There's such a thirst for content, and there's incredible content coming out of India that people want to see and should see. So
Yeah. So
I
I
think
mean,
everything you're doing
there's
is, yeah.
yeah. So there's one thing that's effort, and the second, and whether you like it or no, is money. You need to put some money behind this effort, otherwise, it's going to go nowhere. And this is a thought experiment that I've kind of worked on for a while. That one of the bigger problems with the Indian content industry, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. One of the best things about Indian content is that most of it is consumed by Indians, and the worst thing about the industry is that most content is consumed by Indians, because we don't need to create content that appeals to the rest of the world. We don't create content and an ecosystem that appeals to the rest of the world. If 90% of a Hindi film's revenue is going to come from within India, they're not really going to focus too much on that 10%, right? Even though, and what they don't realize is that average revenue per unit, so an average revenue per ticket buyer in the US or Canada or UK, is between $10 to $15, which is 5 times what an Indian ticket buyer would pay, right? So this understanding that you need to create content for the global ecosystem and then sell it to the global ecosystem, right? So if we would like the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting to create this kind of ecosystem. The AVGC policy is currently in development, right? And we're having this conversation at a pretty timely moment. If we request them, or if we have to put forth a set of bullet points on these are the things that you need to do, right? Obviously, they can't mandate education standards. It's up to each individual institution to build them up. But there are things that they can do to take the existing high quality content that's being created and push it out globally. So, what would be your top three or top four list of things that the ministry would should include in its AVGC policy? Charuvi?
Yeah, sure, Chaitanya. Actually, I have it in my bullet points also. Okay, so one of the first thing was, supporting creative entrepreneurs. So an owner like me and various other studios, there isn't any assistance that could enable the business to go further. So what I mean to say with that is, for example, aid in production or funds to cover operating cost or traveling perhaps. So where, when it comes to networking platforms like MIPCOM or many others. So the government could actually provide aid just to cover the travel expenses or accommodation because a lot of governments do that. So that enables various content creators to travel around, network, buy and sell. It becomes an enabler. So that was one point.
Mm.
The other was tax break, reduction of tax liability. So other than that, there's tax credit, of course. I was going through various policies internationally. So, for example, there's a tax credit of 16 to 25% on salaries and wages, especially in Canada for the residents. So, who are working in animation and film production. So, if
Mm.
the government can consider that, why not? Maybe not 16, but at least some sort of a percentage. And of course, grants, incentives, tax benefits. Um,
The
then
government
the
could
other
just
two,
include,
yeah.
sorry, even if the government includes individual content creators and small, two-person, three-person companies under the MSME bracket, so that you have access to
Mhm.
all the MSME funding and that entire ecosystem. So the Pradhan Mantri, all the loans that the people are getting, etc., etc. Because it's small amounts, but it really helps.
It really helps. I mean, at this point of time, usually what an entrepreneur does is they just invest. They try and save from the service work that they're doing and they invest it back into building the business.
Hmm.
But there's no other ecosystem which can support the business owner in animation. So that's the reason why I think if that can be looked into, I think that would really benefit. The
Hmm.
other, which we discussed beforehand, was the format of vocational centers, which needs to change. Then, of course, the other was providing subsidized education. So, if they could be state funded and where
Yeah.
it could be a very selective process, handpick the students and train them, that would be a great enabler. That would really push the talent in a big way.
Yeah.
And the other was, which I had actually thought about a few years back, was, I mean, you look at your machines that most of the studios are using, or any component of the machine or the softwares, all of them are, they are nothing is made in India. So if somehow a agency of the government body can push manufacturing or creating softwares, be not a replica of Adobe or Alienware, but somehow kind of focus their energies in creating their own software tools.
Or
So
even
because in
open
that
source, even
case,
support for open
open
source.
source. Definitely. Because what happens is that any part of your machinery has an import duty. So whatever is coming to India has a huge tax on it.
Yeah.
So which is not the case in any developed country. So why not we start manufacturing the Intels, the Dells of the world, and have
Hmm.
our own system? So that was one thing. So yeah, I think most likely I've covered all.
Nice, interesting.
Yeah.
Vani, what would your wish
That
list
was
be?
fantastic. That was fantastic. I have to follow that. I think all of that, and um, I think we have to look at it from really a planning point of view. I believe in kind of having a roadmap for our country, for our creative country, the Creative India. If we created a platform and we called it Creative India, and under that, if we had the visibility of these are all the people that have done, we've got 20, 30, 40, 50 years of people that have produced certain amount of work, and the younger generation that is going forward in a very different speed. And just that visibility, I would say planning is the number one thing, and then the visibility is the number two thing. Like if there was a website, if there was a government mentioned, here are all the talented people in animation, in graphic, in education, in studios or whatever. If there was one condensed list that floated all around the world that people could just, that would be the first thing that would show up in Google saying Indian creatives, and you have like a long list, and that opens doors. With the internet, I feel like there's so much that's happening that visibility is not there. So I would say that's the
Okay.
second thing. Um, in terms of investment, our country, I'm not saying that this wouldn't happen, but a lot of countries that are very successful in producing content have somehow invested into the individuals, Canada especially, where they've given lots of money for people to make films, because they have that, and they're giving that subsidies or grant money. And if the grant money cannot come from the government can at least say to the studios that every amount of money that you make, or whatever that you do, some way that giving back to the community is a very, very important thing. Whether it comes from the government, whether it comes from organizations, studios, from other sectors. It doesn't have to be that the funding has to come from an animation sector, which is still nascent, but maybe it can come in from another sector where the investment kind of moves forward.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I would parallelly kind of look at is, how do we, if this is, if this industry is lower and this industry is higher, how do we fund this industry so this industry goes higher? So that way everybody catches up. Um, and
Yeah.
I
So,
think
I mean, if you look at
really,
CSR, corporate social responsibility, so every Indian entity is supposed to invest 2% of its profits over the last 3 years into certain things, right? So you give donations, you give grants. So what if they allowed companies to give scholarships to students to study, and that funding, even though it's going to an individual, not to a society or a trust, would be deductible under their CSR? Then you would have more people doing that. What if they what if they provided or they paid for the customs duty of some individual studio that wants to import this high end computing, and it just reduces their burden. So the duty is taken care of as part of the CSR. So there is money available, there is all kinds of funding available. I mean, if you just see in the last, I would say, year and a half, India has created about 40 unicorns in the tech, ed tech, ITES, that space. So there
yeah,
is going in by the droves. Unfortunately, none of it is going towards content creation, or very little of it is going towards content creation, except for the studios. So yeah, Netflix is spending a lot of money. Dharma, Yashraj, Amazon, Sony, they're all spending a lot of money on content, but that's only able to capture a particular part or a particular segment of it, right? So we have to figure out some way of tapping into this large tap that's opened in for all this money that's flowing into India, right? So I mean, what would you think, Bimal? What would be a good way to kind of tap into that?
Okay, I think, see, one thing what I was thinking, like, don't, what is our present functional system? If you just, plug in a small sector, like this year, IFFI, when I went, they were presenting short films with feature films, right? Short films and the documentary. So they club with the big production films with the small production films, right? So
Hmm.
something like that, if we can, just plug in with our normal regular exhibition system, like for films, like if you make it, maybe I don't know how it is possible, but if you make it mandatory, so that the individual filmmakers, the short filmmakers or content writers, they do a lot of experimental stuff, right? Because maybe because of financial difficulties, they choose those lines, but there are possibilities, because when you are working in a short format, so these are the contents also valuable along with your mainstream content, right? So,
Okay.
I mean, if I refer to Vani's point of view, I mean, the world says it's an Indian cartoon animation. So animation is not a cartoon film, right? It's a art medium, right? It's a technology driven art form. So, uh, so exactly. So basically, more you explore the new stories, then the locals, like creating content for adult audience as well, right? It's not
Yeah.
only for children, not only for children. And also probably one more option which we can develop is creating animation residency program, right?
Hmm.
In art field, if you see, there is a lot of residency program coming in abroad. Even in some sector of India, they are also providing that kind of a forum sort of a thing. So similarly, if we can create that sort of a space where student can also join, industry individuals can also join, expertise also come and stay and create a content which is like you were saying earlier, that five selected script, if you can develop in a year, and this kind of platform probably support you to produce those content. I
Okay.
think
Cool.
that could be a
Thanks.
solution, maybe.
Sure. Becca, what kind of support see for international co-productions in Canada and UK that we could learn from?
Well, I think just to chime in on the other topic very quickly, because of everything everybody's saying is just sparking ideas in my own head, which is just different organizations like Women in Film. They'll have different grants to support new
Hmm.
filmmakers. They'll have competitions. There's the Guild, Animation Guild, will have different competitions, different programs for people, education. And, I mean, obviously, there are quite a number of film programs in the US, but there are a lot of people who can't necessarily afford to go to a film school. And so they need other types of support. And the grants that you're all talking about and the residencies also that you're talking about, I think those are like Sundance, for example. They have like, I want to call it not a think tank, uh, but it's basically a program to bring in new people. And then they'll focus on different, they'll focus on diversity maybe, or they'll focus on women, or they'll focus on, different aspects of it.
Sundance has
But I
a
think those,
story lab or a script lab.
yeah, so that's it. Story Lab. Thank you. I'm calling it a think tank. That's what we are. We're the think tank. Yeah, they have a story lab, and then you apply and you submit your script, and then as you go along, you get full support to get it made. And then so
Hmm.
many of the successful film. Now, I know this more from my live action experience. Though they come out of the Sundance Lab, and as you're talking about, they start as a pilot. They start as a short. Then they're picked up. The short is picked up, and then developed by a studio. So I think all of those ways, if that kind of support is there, I think that really offers more support for newer filmmakers, artists, and the mentorship also is super critical as well. So just to throw some more ideas out there of things that I personally know people who have come up from getting this kind of support. Oh, actually, one of the actors that appears on Mira is also a writer director, and he got a grant from Tribeca Film Festival. He got $1 million to make his film, and that was based on submitting a script. And so, and I totally agree with you when it comes to AFM and MIPCOM. So I think all those more presence in those markets is always very helpful. A lot of that, the socializing and the interactions. Totally on a separate note, like in Mira, Zakir Hussain ended up working on the show and actually had a voiceover role on the show. He's quite amazing. But that came through a contact. There was so much of it is the networking content. Content. So what happened was the executive producer on the show, Sasha Palladino, has a personal relationship with his daughter and knew him. And then that happened because there were some Bollywood actors that we tried to reach out to be in our show, but we couldn't make contact. It was too difficult. So I feel like that kind of connection, all of the ideas that everybody's talking about will help in that regard. So I kind of wanted to throw that out there.
Cool. I'm getting messages saying that we're out of time, so we need to wrap up. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. This was very, very interesting. This was enlightening, and hopefully, through what we've spoken, NFDC and the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting will be able to distill out some points that they can put into the AVGC policy. So when the policy comes out, and you see one of the bullet points that Charuvi's mentioned, you can say, that's fine. You never know. It does happen, by the way. I mean, I've seen some of my
It will happen. It will happen.
Yes.
I have complete faith in the future of.
Good.
I really hope so.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good time.
Thank you so much moderating the session.
Thank you, Bazaar. Thank you, Chaitanya. This was great. Bye, everyone.
Yep, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Charuvi.